All right, John. You know what? There isn't a lot of news going on, but the news that is coming out is very, very big because Chris Mellon, who has, for the most part, been the strong, silent type, only speaking when he feels it's relatively necessary, came out and literally has, you know, kind of dropped the gloves on the UFO world, the government world, with a new piece that he brought out. I'll let you explain.
Well, I mean, essentially, I mean, there's two things going on. I mean, in one frame, you have this article that I referenced the other day, which I highly recommend everyone go read, in the debrief, where basically, Christopher Mellon goes over in pretty, pretty, let me say, far more vivid detail than I expected anyone to let him do, as to what he sees as some of the real challenges that we're facing with all of this, including the legislature and the groups and so forth. But then there's this second thing that's come up, which is essentially something that came to us from the Twitter sphere, which is always a lovely place to get breaking news, and that is a specific quote he stated, which I'm going to read. It says, "To clarify, I do think the ET hypothesis best explains the facts for some of these incidents. But that is not proof. And I agree there could be more conventional explanations, or could be a more conventional explanation. Regardless, our failure to identify these incidents is unacceptable and imperils our national security." So, I mean, he's still being the politician and giving himself an out. But for anyone of his stature to be going out and putting in writing that he stands behind the ET hypothesis for any portion of the unacknowledged or undocumented incursions, that's well, let me tell you, from the reaction that he got on Twitter, everyone was pretty taken back by his statement.
For him to come out and talk about this, it reminds me, John, last week we talked about Jim Semivan, the former spy and spook, literally coming out and talking about his alleged alien abduction with his wife. And I asked you point blank, is this the start of phase 3? Okay. Is this the start of phase 3? And you were kind of like, well, I don't really know. But then Chris Mellon drops this extraterrestrial bomb again. And look, we may be reading into this a little bit too far. There is a possibility, but I don't think we are, John. I think we have seen the start of phase 3. And I think that we're going to start seeing more and more ET talk come up through 2022 and beyond.
It's hard because if you think about it, the quiet period that Lou Elizondo mentioned several months ago, that we've essentially been in for some period of time now. We have been in it for some period of time now. Considering the rate in which things move in this world, the amount of time that we've been in this quiet period is it's kind of started to exceed the limitations of what's reasonable. And so because of that, it would be logical to assume that you would start to see actions start to take place as a result of the back end work that was done during that quiet time. So as a result of that, what we're seeing right now is actually terribly logical, completely independent as to whether there are any phases defined. Okay. However, I agree with you that if the phases were defined that way, then this falls within the definition of those phases and does support that hypothesis.
Okay, is it more than hypothesis, though? Because look, the one thing that Lou Elizondo has always taught us is we, as the public, when we hear Lou Elizondo or Chris Mellon speak regarding this topic, we have to be able to read between the lines and take what they are saying between the lines and glue it together for our own knowledge. As Lou has stated, there are a lot of Easter eggs that he has given out that not a lot of people have picked up on. And it's been fun, but frustrating for him. So for you looking into this, I mean, and reading that article that Mellon put out there, do you think they are trying to push the synopsis that, look, people, we got to start getting the extraterrestrials into this conversation because we already know it's not Russia. We already know it's not China. We already know it's not our own technology, but we got to figure out where it's coming from.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and this will actually dovetail into the next article I want to cover, because this does kind of tie into Havana syndrome in a way. But yeah, but I mean, the thing is that it's so hard to know. You know, I mean, for example, you know, if you look at the way the faces were defined, right? That wasn't rocket science, okay? That's actually how most people would lay it out, right? Like, so, and so what that means is that, you know, is do we have a bunch of players that are loosely organized, right? Maybe they're on a shared mail list and they coordinate to a degree, but it's very much like a pack of cats that hurt each other in different directions depending on who's feeling the most passionate about things, right? And because of their awareness of the faces, they take it on their own to then reach out and do things that they think will support those faces. Because I've personally been in that situation before, where I've been the one that's been able to help support something that I didn't normally have any involvement in, right? Or is it a very, you know, meticulous, you know, there's a leader of the group and he's got he or she has a gavel hammer, and you know that they all decide what they're going to push that one week. You know, I mean, that's what some people imply, and that's what I'm more skeptical about. But you know, I completely agree that, you know, depending on how you know, whatever cause you think you can say to it, what we're seeing now is a shift of the conversation to the biological. And that's a really good thing.
That is a good thing, but it's also been a very, very sticky road for this, because when the To the Stars Academy came out, John, they were anti-alien, they were anti-UFO. We got into the UAP subject.
But they weren't anti-alien. They liked the scary
yes,
ones.
They were. Yes, they were.
But they loved the scary ones. They wanted to make movies about the scary. It was kind of like a love-hate relationship, you know?
They were not ready for that conversation. They were not ready. They did not want the public to put together aliens and UFOs. They weren't ready for that. They had to get the subject out there. Now, I know you're TTSA fanboy and still have boxer shorts that have the TTSA logo on it. I get that. I can appreciate that, you know? But this is the truth. That's the truth that I've been told.
Well, no. But here's the thing: is it? I mean, you can say whatever you want about my opinions about TTSA, and you'd probably be very entertained by my real opinion. But the thing is it? You know, what I don't. Let me put it this way: if that's what TTSA was trying to do, they sucked at it, because they didn't do a good job of it at all. Because to me, they were not shying away from the alien conversation at all. What they were doing was they were trying to paint the aliens as monsters. What they were trying to do was spread fear. What they were doing is spreading stories about aliens that were scary. So they wanted to talk about aliens. They just wanted to talk about them in a very negative light.
That wasn't the TTSA, though. That was Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge
had been CEO of TTSA.
Interim CEO.
He's still the CEO. I mean, that's the public spokesman of a public company. Right?
That's because nobody wants to run a worthless company.
All I'm saying is that all you can do is I mean, look, if the CEO is saying something, you can either, you know, I mean, that's the position of the company to a degree, right? I mean, it's like, but yeah, I mean, I agree that there was no interest to talk about. I agree that there was absolutely no interest to talk about experiencers. That I completely 100%
absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, the person I got this information from was very close to the inside. Okay. And, once again, I hate saying I can't say who, but I
Oh,
can't
no. And I don't doubt that it was internal policy. I'm just saying that as an outsider watching it happen, I never got the sense they were anti-alien. I got the sense that they wanted to talk about aliens. They just wanted to talk about them in a negative light. I did get the sense they were anti-experiencers, but I never got the experience. I mean, the first movie they're coming out with is Monsters in California, right? They want to sell fear.
Well, absolutely, but Tom DeLonge, for the public record, did not have a fear of aliens until he started chatting and writing his books with Peter Levenda. Peter Levenda, who's has a religious background in this field, also started saying that pretty much anything that came from space on a biblical proportion would be evil, would be bad, and that's why Tom DeLonge went on Joe Rogan, made a fool out of himself by saying we got to put nuclear weapons in space because the aliens are coming. They're going to eat us. They're going to enslave us. They're going to kill us. They're going to wipe out our planet. And that's what we need to be. And Tom actually got warned by the remainder of the people on the To the Stars Academy board of directors to not be speaking that way. And that was warning number one that they got from him. And that's why he was banned from much of the press for a long time. And we didn't hear from Tom. That's when we saw the immediate emergence of Lou Elizondo. All right. It was all fed by Peter Levenda on Tom's attitude towards that. And that is the God's honest truth that I've been told by numerous sources, including Tim McMillan from the debrief.
No, I don't doubt it in any way, shape, or form. I just, like I said, that's just in practice. I just saw, just a different side of it myself, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm not trying to overstep you here. Please don't think that.
No, I think it's interesting that there's a delta. I mean, because once again, that shows the lack of professionalism and capabilities of the organization, right? I mean, it's like, if you, but yeah, I mean, Lavenda is, I mean, he's, for all of his positive attributes, I mean, he's fire and brimstone, without a doubt.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, that's where the whole aspect came from. And they really were out to separate UFOs from extraterrestrials, and especially, like you said, which I 100% agree with you, the experiencers. They didn't want anything to do with the experiential crowd.
No.
Not at first. Not at first.
No.
But now, okay. So I know I've explained this a number of times. We got 2 minutes left before we got to go to break. This, from what I have been told by insiders, this comes as a 3-phase series. Phase 1 was to admit that there's something in our airspace that we don't know. That's what led to the videos. That's where we heard could be Russia, could be China, could be something human, could be from a far off land. Phase 2 was confirmation that it wasn't China, wasn't Russia, nothing human. And we are now trying to figure out where this technology is coming from. Confirmation that UAP are real, get it into the government's hands so we could get some taxpayers' money and everything that we've seen play out. Well, guess what? We got the budget, especially in the United States. Up here in Canada, we're still running around trying to figure out where our prime minister is hiding. All right.
Well, you don't use real money anyway, so it's hard.
Well, if you're at McDonald's, order a McTrudeau, right? Anyways, moving on. Phase 3, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we have Bill Nelson talking about extraterrestrials. We have people at the Pentagon talking about extraterrestrials. And now Jim Semivan comes out about his potential abduction with his wife that's happened twice, where the beings were in their bedroom. And now we have Chris Mellon talking about the potentiality of extraterrestrials visiting here on Earth. Yep. To me, that tells me point blank, phase 3 has started.
Okay, but and I agree, and that all makes sense to me. But I would ask this question: I still see us as extremely early in this entire war. So we're already at phase 3. So does that mean there's like 78 phases? I mean, it's like, come on. I mean, it's like,
let's go to commercial break. We'll discuss this afterwards because I think you just hit on a very good point. John, right before the break, we were talking about, have we entered phase 3 of the whole UFO aspect? Now, you had stated, hey, we haven't even finished phase 2 here. How can we be going on to phase 3? I think
and let me just add to that is that what they've defined as phase 1, 2, and 3 is like 10% of the journey, right? I mean, like there's so much more that has to happen after that. Like, why isn't that being defined?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is a blending. It's like putting sprinkles on it. That's the next part of the conversation. That's what I think is happening. Look, we have to find out and get through a number of reports here first. Okay, let's see how clean those reports are. The next report that's due is near the end of June, I believe. And that's what we need to be able to see.
Yeah. So I think I'm just losing patience. I want to be discussing tourism visas, and I want to be discussing amnesty rights, and I want to be discussing intergalactic marriage laws and religious rights and so forth. I mean, it's like that's the point I want to get to. Like this stuff's just like peanuts. Very frustrating.
By the way, did you happen to see the photo of scientist Gary Nolan with Katy Perry?
No, I didn't. I got to find that.
There is a photo with scientist Gary Nolan with Katy Perry.
That's hilarious. I had no idea.
And
that's funny.
And a lot of people will just look at that as, okay, they were there. I have been told that there was a meeting, okay, between some people involved in the UFO community and some big name scientists and some very elite business and Hollywood types that got together a couple of months ago to have a very long evening of discussing the reality of this subject.
I am beyond pleased to hear this, and I was kind of hoping that what's her name, who's the one woman who's been out in front in the music industry about UFOs, has a TV show. Anyway, we've talked about her, but I would take what she's done and essentially use that as a motivation and a catalyst for other people to get involved. Because let's face it, if you are in a position where you've accepted any part of what we're talking about is real, and then you ask yourself, okay, so this is real. How do we educate the Americans between the ages of 8 and 12 about this? This is how you do it. You'd go to the music industry, right? That would be the way to do it. So I think this is brilliant. I think as long as it's done very, very carefully and very transparently, I think it's awesome. Because let's face it, as we've talked about time and time again, music artists are not just as likely as anyone else to have an interest in this world. They are actually more likely to have an interest in this world.
Well, this goes way beyond Demi Lovato.
Demi Lovato, thank you.
Okay, it goes way beyond.
Yeah. Demi. Oh no, but all I was saying was I was hoping that she would be a catalyst to show that to wake up everyone else in the industry to say, wait a second, we could be doing a lot more than she's doing, and we could be doing it more honestly and doing a lot of good. And let's get together and see what we can pull off. That's awesome. I mean, it's nice to hear there's some adults in the room.
Well, this meeting that I was told about, and to be honest with you, the person who told me about it, at first I didn't believe them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it sounded a little bit too odd, if I were to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I knew she was there, Katy Perry, that is. I was also told there were a number of billionaires there and some very other high wealthy and prominent people, because when it does explode, there is going to be a lot of people who are going to all of a sudden be on board with this subject. And that is
Ooh, are we
the
gonna do like another We the World video? Like,
no, it's not going to be it's not going to be like that or anything like that. But what I look, this person who told me this didn't tell me much detail. All I was told was that there was a high profile meeting and there were certain scientists there from the UFO world, and I didn't even know. I didn't just hear me out for a second.
Yeah.
I didn't even know which scientists were there until I saw the photo between
Yeah.
and Katy Perry.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. That's a logical connection. But what I was going to say is that you have to assume that once this becomes general conversation, that a significant portion of the entertainment industry is going to come out and tell their own stories because it's all coming out and because they want to be included. And so having anyone come in and try to orchestrate or steer that in any constructive way is perfectly logical, because it's probably going to happen naturally anyway.
You would think so.
Right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, honestly, it's going to happen everywhere. I mean, every industry is going to go through this. Suddenly, you're going to have a bunch of truckers. Suddenly, you're going to have a bunch of this group and this group and this group and this group, and it's going to spread like wildfire.
You would hope. I mean, for people who don't know, I mean, Gary Nolan and Jacques Vallée are highly involved in scientific study at Stanford University regarding this phenomena.
Yes.
And it is something that they are pushing together. Yes. They are pushing it very, very hard. And I will show you.
And I should add that I finally found out how that relationship began. And it was because of the work that Gary Nolan did on that little alien baby thingamajigger, that Atacom, whatever it was, that thing that they thought was an alien baby that turned out not to be. So the DNA work that Gary Nolan did on that is what resulted in him and Jacques having a lunch in Palo Alto. And then that lunch went so well that resulted in them now working together.
All I'm saying is I am very jealous that Dr. Gary Nolan has his picture with Katy Perry. I am very jealous about that. Now, I don't know, and this is for the record, I don't know if that was the same party.
Sure, of course not. Yeah. Okay. Of course not.
I don't know that.
I mean, that could have been an after party from the event. I mean, who knows, right? Or maybe they're BFFs now. Who knows? I mean, anything's possible.
All I know is that I'm going to get Gary Nolan on this show, and I am totally going to fangirl over Katy Perry with him, that he got to stand up close and personal with her. And now I want his autograph.
And I want to know, was Keisha there?
No idea.
Because if she wasn't, she's going to be pissed when she finds out.
I don't know. I really don't know. But, I mean, the idea that there is this unit coming together behind the scenes, this is the stuff we don't hear. Okay? This is the stuff we don't know. These are the conversations that we don't think of in everyday UFO Twitter land. This is why a lot of the big names in this field, or whom we consider the power players in this field, whether it's Elizondo or Chris Mellon or Jacques Vallée or Gary Nolan or Eric Davis, this is why they just look at all of us at UFO Twitter and shows like we're doing like this, and they laugh. They do. They pay attention because every now and again there's a nice spot of information, but for the most part, they laugh. Because we're not getting it. We're not seeing the bigger picture of what they want us to see or what we're not ready to see. This is very controlled. It's like a demolition. You have to put the dynamite sticks in the right spots in order to implode a building, right? Otherwise, debris gets thrown everywhere. It's where you may want to talk, John.
No, I'm struggling. I don't know if I agree on how orchestrated it is. I mean, I've gotten pretty high up in the world, and I find that things don't really work out that way. But it's an interesting hypothesis on your part.
Could be,
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
I really don't know. It's my assumption.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But I mean, but the thing is like I said, to me, it's perfectly logical. And the thing is that you're gonna want, all sorts of people from all sorts of areas getting involved in this over time, right? And it's like, and yeah, I mean, the most the most impactful things that get done for this will be done by places that we haven't even heard of yet. I mean, you really want to see where this ends up. Go do a search for that UN video where they show what it's like for an alien child going to a school with Earthlings. Right? There was a UN promotional video or something that was done with a little alien kid. You watch that. That's probably fairly realistic, but it's to me, it's like, I don't know, like I said, even if it hadn't been orchestrated, I would have expected a bunch of the stars to reach out to scientists they know if they have a passion for this topic already and start laying groundwork for getting involved in whatever and speaking out, maybe doing something with Demi Lovato, maybe whatever it may be, engaging in the community in some way, shape, or form, and eventually some of them will start writing albums about it.
Well, I think the big thing, the reason why they haven't gone down the Demi Lovato road is because she's hooked her trailer up to Dr. Stephen Greer.
Oh yeah,
and
it's quite
and
possible.
the fantasy and the fantasies that he has. Okay, quickly, we've got about 2 minutes here, buddy.
Yep.
You wanted to get into the Havana syndrome and UFOs. What's this about?
Yeah, so this came out in Gary Nolan's discussion, and this discussion was done with Lex Friedman, and I like this thing is packed with so much stuff that needs to be discussed. I can't even begin. All sorts of things fell out of this interview, like the fact that Gary Nolan just joined the Galileo project. Surprise, surprise. But the thing that was really significant was it turns out that the group of people that were brought to Gary Nolan who had apparent brain injuries that had an unknown origin. The assumption was that group was a group that was heavily populated by contactees. That wasn't known. That was assumed, right? And it was known that some of them did, right? It turns out that after engaging with Jacques Vallée and after doing a bunch of work, it turns out that a significant number of the patients that Gary Nolan has been looking at, he's no longer looking at them. Because what he's discovered is that they're actually Havana syndrome. And as soon as they get tagged Havana syndrome, they're no longer in his domain. And they go back and they're now under a different purview of the government that's doing that analysis. And so to me, it's extremely interesting. One, that essentially we had a group of people that some believed were showing indications of being experiencers, and that's not true. They're actually sufferers of Havana syndrome, which we know very little about. Two, the fact that the instant it becomes Havana syndrome, it's now assumed to no longer be contact, and therefore it's pulled out of Gary Nolan's jurisdiction and put into another system. And essentially, he indicated that the majority of the cases fell into that. It ended up being categorized as Havana syndrome. And now, the flip side is that you recently had some people come out and try to claim that the Havana syndrome is not a Russian or Chinese tool. And we've gone through that same process of saying that, you know, alien stuff isn't Russian or Chinese either. So I don't know. Like, I'm starting to get a really uncomfortable feeling that Havana syndrome might end up being much more deeply tied to this phenomenon than anyone cares to admit.
Oh, absolutely. The amount of trauma that is out there that is caused by these experiences, I think it's a very, very strong path for anybody to study. And if Gary Nolan is going down that, and trust me, our audience, you're going to hear Gary Nolan's name a lot in 2022. I
Yes.
really do believe that. He is turning out to be a very big power player in this entire phenomena and the true scientific study of it all. Jon Hudson, another great unbiased UFO report.